It says, "Hey, coach, my question is on soul ties. Are men equally affected as women?" Yeah. Let's look at it this way. And I don't want to generalize because people are different, but for the most part, by women being more emotional, they're affected immediately. By men being more mental, they're affected eventually. And that's why women get confused because the man logically lures himself out of a relationship or logically perceives that something may be better. We're more headstrong. So what happens is, or the other part is stronger than in his mind. So he until he has finished his, like the prodigal son, until he has finished, some men don't come into realization they did something wrong until years later because they allowed the logical part of their mind and the lust of their loins to lead them, and then they have to eat and divulge into their lust and insecurities, and then at the end of that, men come and are turned around. But since women are more emotional, technically, and for the most part, they're affected immediately because emotions are their main, I wouldn't say their main language, but one of their dominant ways of expressing themselves. Since men are more logical and sometimes are based upon how much self-control they have over their loins, they're going to just keep going and keep going. They don't realize how damaged they are until they come to the end of a thing. So when it comes to soul ties, let me look at your question again. Why, when you decide to, that's another person's question. Hold on, let me go back up. Hey, coach, my question is on soul ties. Are men equally affected? Yeah, they equally affected, but they just don't feel the effects until later in most parts. There's some men who feels it immediately. That's when they have become infatuated with a woman, and the woman has more of a strong disposition than the man. So the man who's more emotional or effeminate, or just been around circles where he's more in tune with his emotion, he'll be affected immediately. But on the most part, because women are predominantly more emotional in some cases, they're affected immediately. Men who are logical and who just trying to figure this thing out are affected eventually. That's why you always find the big head text 3 months later, because it took him 3 months to realize who you were. And about time he found out who you were, you done healed up in those 3 months. And that's what confused women. Like, why are you coming back now? It's because they went out there to did their dirt and they realized that that what they was pursuing wasn't really what they needed, and now they want to come back to you. But that, if a person doesn't recognize your value uh for who you are, and they're not clearly communicating what they need. And if a man says, "Hey, I think we need to just take a break because I feel like I'm overly infatuated myself with you, I don't feel like I'm growing like I need to grow," then let that man do what he needs to do. But if a man just ups and leaves and doesn't recognize your value and want to come back, you don't know what he's coming back to you with. He probably got Susie and Karen inside of him, soul ties wise. He probably got STDs. You don't know what that man's bringing back to the table. So know your worth, build yourself up if you feel like you've been broken away from someone else. And so, yeah, men are equally affected. They just don't feel the effects till later in most situations. And I won't even say most, in a lot of situations. Good question. Did Jaquila says,